What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It's Wednesday, December 28th, 2016, halfway through the week, hump day, starting at long, slow glide, down to basically New Year's. We're coming up on New Year's, and boy, I got to tell you, just listening to the people playing with the illegal fireworks around here, it's going to be a raucous New Year here on the island of Oahu. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Dan is sitting into our control room today for the first hour of the show, so be nice when you call on in, and he'll get you on the air to talk about whatever it is that you want to talk about. So getting on to Barack Obama as he winds down the last few weeks of his term in office, and apparently he's going crazy with refugees and executive orders to the point where Donald Trump, who publicly has had nothing but good things to say about Obama since the election, is privately starting to express a certain degree of annoyance at how heavy-handed Obama is at trying to cement his policies into place in such a way that it would be very, very difficult for Trump to undo them. But the reality is, when you're talking about Obama's legacy, how he'll appear in the history books, and he's running around right now trying to basically plant all this stuff for people to write in the history books about how he had the most transparent administration in history and how he led the economic recovery of our country. But the reality is, as head of the Democratic Party, he has been a disaster. And since Obama first entered the Oval Office 8 years ago, the Democrats have suffered a net loss of 1,042 state and federal Democratic posts, including congressional and state legislative seats, governorships, and, of course, as of November 8th, the presidency itself. And basically what failed to happen is Obama's popularity failed to translate into support for other Democrats, and that's mostly because Obama's popularity was a manufactured illusion, as phony as all those polls that said Hillary Clinton was going to win in a landslide. And Obama literally said that his legacy was on the ballot November 8th, and, of course, Trump won. Now, the Democrats are planning a big to-do, a concert. This promoter is going to put this, it's going to be star-studded celebrities, all those liberal celebrities who promised us they were going to Canada. Well, they're not doing that. They're on their way to Florida to have this big celebrity shindig that's happening right at the same time as the inauguration to try and pull the audience away. Yeah, okay, he's the president, but don't look at him getting sworn into office. We have celebrities. We have stars. We have girls in skimpy outfits. It's going to be fun. You want to watch us now. And Donald Trump actually kind of ribbed them because he went on back and said, I really don't want the celebrities at my inauguration. After all, they really didn't help Hillary Clinton, did they? And that's a very, very valid point. Now, as you know, Barack Obama, who wrote more executive orders than any other president in U.S. history, had the goal to lecture Donald Trump against using executive orders. And, of course, we know the reason why. Obama wants his executive orders left in place. Not going to happen. Report that we're seeing is that Trump is already planning to reverse 70% of Obama's executive orders, basically erasing Obama's legacy, at least as it is implemented within the government itself. And I imagine a lot of these executive orders saying don't go after the illegal immigrants and the refugees, those are going to be the first on that chopping block, as it were. There's been another bomb scare at the Trump Tower. People keep walking on in and leaving suspicious packages just to see everybody scurry as they evacuate Trump Tower, and the bomb squad has to come on out and open up the package, and it's nothing. But it's just another form of these crybaby, snowflake, buttercup liberals throwing a tantrum because the world isn't what they wanted it to be. And they really do need to grow up. Now, over in the Hillary Clinton camp, there will be a great wailing and gnashing of teeth because the email lawsuits that were started by Judicial Watch and Cause of Action have been revived. The appeals court unanimously ruled that the lower court judge erred in simply throwing these lawsuits out. So these Clinton email lawsuits are back. And basically the Federal Appeals Court is inviting Donald Trump's incoming Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, to be involved in this process. And the issue was that Secretary of State John Kerry refused to refer the matter of Hillary Clinton's private email server as Secretary of State to the Attorney General, as is required by federal law. Instead, Kerry allowed the State Department to sort of police itself, to pick and choose which emails could be withheld and which would be released to the public. And that, of course, is at the core of this lawsuit, Judicial Watch versus Kerry, saying that, no, you didn't follow the legal procedure to get these things out there. All right, we're going to do a shout-out now to our on-air affiliates who are just rejoining our network. We're talking about the email scandal has come on back. And right now we're seeing Hillary supporters all over the net pushing for Obama to give her a blanket pardon because, after all, Gerald Ford did it, to do the Watergate. Technically, what Gerald Ford did was illegal. You have to be convicted of a crime before you can apply for a pardon and be granted one. Gerald Ford simply said, we're going to pardon everybody up front, ahead of time, no more investigations, no more. And nobody kicked up a fuss over its constitutionality because everybody in Washington, D.C. wanted the dark truth behind Watergate hidden from the American people. Even Richard Nixon's worst enemies were working as hard as they could to keep that away from the American people, because that would have brought down the government. And a lot of what the Clintons have been doing ever since that CIA gun and drug running operation in Arkansas back in the 1980s, that would bring the government down as well. Now, again, showing how childish Hillary Clinton supporters are. And again, you need to understand, Hillary managed her supporters in her campaign as a personality cult. They worshipped her. The laws don't matter. The rules don't matter. We worship the goddess Hillary and we must serve her. And their emotional reaction following Hillary's loss, rioting, Jill Stein's ridiculous attempt at a recount, which backfired when it uncovered massive election fraud favoring Hillary, and then threats to the Electoral College, and that one backfired because Hillary set a record, all-time record for faithless electors voting against her in U.S. history. So she's got her little place in the history book on that one. Out here in Hawaii, and I have to wag my finger. There's a cafe down in Honolulu, and it's Cafe 8, and they got a Yandex listing and everything. They hung up on the front of their door a sign saying, if you voted for Donald Trump, you cannot eat here. And it's childish, it's unprofessional. It certainly does not send the image of aloha to the rest of the world for the Aloha State. And first of all, anybody who did want to eat there, it's not like they've got their voting ticket stuck to their forehead. Oh, yeah, I voted for Hillary. I want whatever it is you're serving today. And this cafe is being excoriated. Everybody's going into Yandex and all the other review sites and just saying you don't want to go there. And it was a very childish thing to do. And here's the reality. If I were an investor in this cafe, I would be seriously thinking about asking for my money back, just from a purely business point of view. Because even though Hillary Clinton won the state of Hawaii, Donald Trump got 30% of the vote. That means this cafe has just alienated almost 1/3 of their potential customers living here in the state, plus any tourists who might be inclined to go there. It's probably even a wider margin given that Trump won the election. But it just underscores how childish Hillary's people are, these liberal Democrat snowflakes. Now, as you know, the corporate media has declared war on the independent media. Actually, they're declaring war on just about everybody, including Donald Trump. And they're very angry that they are not the sole conduit between Donald Trump and the American people, because Donald Trump is going directly to the American people with his tweets. And so CNN anchor Don Lemon came on out and said, I've got a great solution. If the corporate media wouldn't report on Donald Trump's tweets, then he'll be forced to come back to the corporate media and allow us to present what he says to the world. Well, there's a couple of problems with that. First of all, as Trump has pointed out correctly, the corporate media keeps twisting and spinning what he's actually saying. There was that huge stink over NBC where they edited one of his tweets to change its meaning. Second, if corporate media isn't reporting his tweets, big deal. Nobody's watching the corporate media anymore. We're going over to Twitter. And to me, it shows CNN is still a little bit in denial that the world is changing around them. And they need to wake up. CNN just set an all-time record low for ratings. There are more people watching the Gardening Channel than are watching CNN right now. And they better wake up and realize that business as usual is business about to go out of business. We're going to take a phone call here. Bob in Las Vegas. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, hi, Mike. I think Jack Lord is turning in his grave after this this Cafe 8.5, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right. You're right. It's so moronic. I mean, you're alienating 1/3 of your potential clients, and also, how are they going to enforce such a measure?
I mean that's why it's so ridiculous. If I were inclined to go in there, which I'm not, I'm never going to set foot in that place. I'd go on in and say, oh yeah, I voted for Bernie Sanders, and well, give me a meal. It's a ridiculous. It's poorly thought out. It's a knee-jerk reaction. I mean, the sign was just hand-printed. Somebody just lost it right there and put that on up there.
But they also equated Trump voters to Nazis. It said no Nazis at the bottom of the note.
Yes.
Of the notice. So
yes.
It's but I just have probably the most important question of the day of today's show. I want to see if you could clarify something before I commit to actually watching the inauguration. I wanted to know the skimpy outfits. Will Hillary be one of the women in the skimpy outfits?
I somehow don't think that will be the case because that would definitely be a turnoff for me here. But I mean, let's face it, Trump's got the hot babes now. Ivanka and Melania. I mean, she's the hottest first lady in U.S. history. Let's be honest about that.
Absolutely. Mike, my Facebook, I have a Facebook account, and I use it just to basically offend the liberals, get out a message, go after Drexel like we were talking about yesterday, or the corporate media. But I actually was upset you were talking about Facebook, and I tried to delete my profile, and this is the second time this has happened. I can't delete my profile.
Oh, they don't want you to go.
I cannot do it.
They don't want you to go. Somebody actually wrote in and said, I'm canceling my Twitter account, but all my tweets are still being kept. And there are actually services now that you can go to, and some of them are free, and online tools where you will put in your information, and they will automate the process of going through and erasing all of your tweets and all your Facebook posts. I think it's a waste of time. If Facebook wants to recycle my old posts from 10, 20 years ago, that's great. It's like the corporate media today, endless rerunnings of the boring tedium and so forth, and they're just rendering themselves irrelevant. But again, go over to these new startup social media. They're promising no censorship. So far, they haven't. I have made Yandex my default search engine. Yeah. There is some functionality that I wish they had. But at this point, the fact that I'm able to put in a search term and get both sides of every story, Yandex is definitely it.
No, but I think Facebook, they're getting desperate because I keep typing in my password and it says incorrect password, and it's not allowing me to delete my profile. So I think they're probably trying to prevent me from doing so because it'll impact their numbers. But whatever the case, but. Mike, the last thing on Obama. Before
you move forward, you're right about the numbers. Facebook's stock is tanking. They've been caught with all these mistakes, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, say no more, that are overcharging their advertisers. They're artificially inflating their numbers. And if there is a mass defection from Facebook, over this censorship issue, they're gone. They are going to be gone. And they should be gone.
Absolutely.
Okay.
They should be.
Yes.
You know, Obama had said on the email server, the first he heard of it was on the news.
Yeah, well, we know that was a lie.
Okay, that was a lie. But he said that on 2 other occasions regarding the VA hospital scandal and the IRS targeting of liberty groups. Both times he said, "This is the first I've heard of it. I heard about it on the news."
Really?
So he's either the most clueless, disinterested, disengaged president, or just the biggest liar in the world.
Well, the two are not mutually exclusive, and you're absolutely right about that. As the president, it's his job to know what's going on. It's his job to know what Hillary Clinton was doing. And the fact of the matter is that all of that stuff that Hillary was doing, giving weapons and arms to ISIS and Al-Qaeda in Syria, she didn't do that on her own authority. Absolutely not. And we've got an update on that very issue a little bit later in the show.
You're right. They're not mutually exclusive, but it reminds me of that line that Gordon Gekko said on Wall Street. What are you, 12th man on the deal team, last to know? I mean, he's the last guy to know. Oh, but he's the president.
Yes.
So it's absurd. So, all right, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you, Mike.
All right, thank you here, and we're going to switch over to Steve in California. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, you're right about the president knows what the Secretary of State is doing, just like Reagan played stupid about the whole Iran-Contra affair with Ollie North, so he knew what was going on. But
wait a minute. We have to sort of remember two things. First of all, it was Vice President George Herbert Walker Bush was running Iran-Contra or Operation Screwworm out of the White House. I remember Reagan was already suffering from Alzheimer's at that time. Bush was actually calling the shots on that.
Yeah, you're right. That's true. That's true. But as far as this restaurant owner in Hawaii, what a stupid move. I mean, his very actions is undermining the whole democratic process if you believe that a vote is your vote and it's a valued vote, a decision of the people. By saying something so stupid that you can't eat in my restaurant if you voted for Trump undermines the whole concept of democracy. This guy's an idiot.
Well, he's an idiot because he's just destroyed his own business. Like I said, the 30% of people of Hawaii who voted for Donald Trump, they're never going to set foot in there at Cafe 8.5. The tourists who are coming on in, this thing is going viral all over the web. People are just not going to go there. They're piling on to Yandex and the Facebook page and saying the food is crud, the service is lousy, you don't want to go there. This guy may have just self-immolated.
Well, good. That's what should happen to stupidity. That should happen.
I agree.
Thank you, Michael.
All right, let's switch over to Glenn in Philadelphia. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, Mike. I have a suggested tactic for dealing with Cafe 8.5.
Yes.
Go there, order your food, eat your food, leave a 25% tip for the waiter or waitress, and write on a paper napkin, "Oh, by the way, I voted for Trump. Have a nice day." And then kill them with kindness.
I disagree. I disagree. I'm not going to give them my money. I'm absolutely not going to go in there, and then I feel bad for the service staff because they're going to suffer for this because the tips won't be there. But I mean, it's ridiculous. And I understand the law is that any place of business can refuse service to anybody. But to do this ham-handed situation, maybe this guy thought the publicity would actually build business for him, but if he actually thought that, it is backflashing horribly, and I'm almost willing to wager a plugged nickel that Cafe 8.5 is going to be gone by summertime.
It could be. But you know what? If all his wait staff, all his employees are saying good things, hey, those Trump people are leaving good tips. It's going to make him look pretty bad, right in front of, to his own people.
Well, I disagree. I think the best thing we can do is just not go in there. Just not go in there. We got to take. Hang on. We got to take. Thank you. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're going to go to Tim in Hot Springs. Aloha, Tim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
First, my condolences to John and his family.
Yes.
And sorry about the noise, but I'm getting back in the house. We got one of those rainy days. But no, the first thing, of course, is the broadcastify.com on the nightclub down in Florida. I believe that site's still 12 to 3 a.m. It's still blanked out. And, of course, that was the next morning. That was a national security planned event. And I'm just wondering what you've heard about that.
I've heard absolutely nothing about it. But I'm obviously, as you can tell from the graphic that's at the very top of my website today, I'm concerned about the coming weekend because we are seeing this nonstop demonization of Russia, which is very reminiscent of the demonization of Osama bin Laden that we were being saturated with in the weeks before 9/11. We know that the U.S. and Great Britain are trying to regain the initiative in Syria. That's going very badly for them. We know that NATO has got all these troops all along the Russian border up there in Europe. And so it is not beyond the realm of possibility that they may be getting ready to try some kind of a false flag that will be blamed on Russia, and they launch the attack before anybody can say, hey, let's see some real evidence this time. And that would give the Warhawks basically 20 days to push the conflict past the point of no return before Donald Trump can get into the Oval Office and yank the plug.
Yes, sir. Well, it's all connected, though, because like you're talking about the false flag, what I don't understand is, also, it's funny that they're using the Muslims for this.
Well, it's just like the Nazis used the Jews. Yeah, just like the way the Nazis used the Jews.
Yes, and so we've got to find a way to stop that. In other words, it's these false flags like Orlando and they're doing all these things. That's like Aleppo. In other words, Aleppo is gone. They have blown that place apart, and God bless those people. But yeah, most of those pictures coming out there are just propaganda, but there's some finally coming out about the people, the real people of Aleppo.
Oh, yeah. And, they celebrated Christmas for the first time in 4 years. And, of course, the corporate media is trying to claim that the people of Aleppo are now terrified that Assad is back in charge because he's going to do terrible things to them, like stain their tea cozies and, throw dust all over their furniture or whatever it is he's supposed to be doing. But it's a lot of nonsense. I mean, Aleppo has been under the control of these U.S.-backed terrorist groups, and the people of Aleppo are glad that they are now finally gone.
Yes, well, that's great. It still concerns me, though, that they're going to do another one of these like you're talking about, because it all comes down to, like you always say, it's the banksters. In other words, those are the ones who are really behind this. So we have to follow the money, just like the Clinton Foundation. It's the money. Follow that money trail.
Well, again, the money trail here is very simple. The United States has allowed its manufacturing to decline. Nobody wants our GMO agriculture. The only thing that makes the dollar valuable internationally is you must have dollars to buy natural resources, oil primarily, from these nations that are under U.S. overt or covert control. And that's really what's pushing it. They want a war against the ruble and the yuan to keep the dollar supreme. And without that, the dollar is on its way out. There's no other reason to have one.
Yes, sir. Well, I think it's still all connected. In other words, it's just the whole thing may be a false flag. And I hate to say it that way, but remember, we've got Fukushima and Hanford, Washington. And there's no words about these two sites anymore, and that's what concerns me.
Well, that's not entirely true. I mean, we were reporting on last week where TEPCO and the Japanese government are now admitting that most of the news reports and low radiation readings that they were putting out in the first months after the disaster were in fact fictitious to keep the public calm, to avoid a panic. And now they're going on back and saying, yeah, we pretty much cooked the place.
Yes, they did too, and may God have mercy on us. But yes, a lot of these things are finally coming to light, and we sure appreciate you guys doing this. And glad y'all had a good Christmas.
Well, we did. Thank you very much here. We're coming up on another commercial break. We're going to let you go here. Got another call waiting when we come on back, and then we got to do some more news. All right, thank you. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to take 2 more phone calls, then we're going to close the phone lines for a bit because I got a bunch of news I need to share with you. So we're going to go to Steve in Virginia. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, thank you very much. I was just going to say, we were also saddened by passing of our friend John, very good caller. But I just wanted to ask you if you had any more to share about this Netanyahu's reaction the other day to the UN vote. I thought I just heard a small blurb about it.
Well, it's childish in the extreme. I mean, he's up there saying that Israel doesn't have to listen to any other governments about how they're going to behave, and that's been Israel's problem all along. It's this attitude that Israel has a right to do what Israel wants, and to heck with international law, to heck with the United Nations, to heck even with the United States. You know, and Netanyahu is out there expressing outrage. How dare the United States not use their veto to protect Israel from the consequences of its blatantly illegal actions? Of course, Netanyahu is not outraged enough to return that $38 billion, now that the check is cleared. But that's Netanyahu, and I understand he's in a panic because he's coming up on the possible loss of his job because of this debacle, and he's looking at corruption investigation and possible prison. And he certainly wouldn't be the first Israeli prime minister to go to prison. But everything that he's saying and doing is only making Israel look worse in the eyes of the world, and it already looked pretty bad. If you saw the video of the actual Security Council vote on this resolution, when it was announced it had passed, the whole room erupted into applause, and you did not see that on the American corporate media, because you're not supposed to realize just how sick and tired everybody is of Israel's behavior, and how it's long overdue for Israel to get a little dose of humble in their behavior.
Yeah. There's, I guess, as far as that $38 billion, there's no way that once the new people get into office and Trump, that they could do something about that?
Well, unfortunately, Trump is very pro-Israel, and I get a lot of emails saying, see, he's pro-Israel, and yes, he is, but so was Hillary Clinton. But I think Trump's support for Israel is going to be a little bit more measured, and certainly that was the criticism coming out of the Israeli press during the campaign. They wanted Hillary because Hillary would just nod and say yes, whatever Israel wanted. Trump is probably going to be a little bit more taking it on case-by-case basis, and the more Netanyahu thrashes around and shows how childish he is, I think Trump is just going to pull back and say, wait a minute, this is not something that I can get behind. So I have a sense, I'm not going to put any money on it, I have a sense that after the first 100 days, going into year number 2 of the Trump administration, that Trump is going to get as sick and tired of Netanyahu and Israel's government as everybody else on the planet.
Yeah, that's hopeful. We were really hoping he was going to at least put the brakes to some degree on just blatantly or just giving everything that he wants to them. We've been kind of concerned about that.
Well, it's a valid concern, but remember, Trump won the presidency without the benefit of AIPAC, so they don't really have a strong pull on him. Basically, Israel's talons, if you will, into Trump are primarily through a few individuals like Sheldon Adelson, and so Trump may feel that he has to repay some favors. But in the long run, I think Trump is going to realize that Israel's government's behavior is the problem, and not just anti-Semitism and Jew hate. And so I'm expecting in year 2 we'll see Trump kind of pull back on all of that.
Yeah. I just have one thing. Do you believe that there are Israelis, there citizens in Israel who actually, or is there a good number that actually are against more or less what Netanyahu is? His policies? Is it hard to say what percentage is for him and what percentage may not be happy with him? It's
hard to say because the Israeli media is even more controlled by their government than the American media, and we know how bad the American media is. What I'm hearing from people who live in Israel is that ordinary Israelis are very unhappy. They're aware of, or they've been told about all this danger about terrorism, but they see Israel's continued aggressions against their neighbors as the cause of that terror, rather than a solution. And, as a matter of fact, Netanyahu's support isn't all that great. In fact, I would say probably the current old guard in Israel's Knesset does not enjoy a broad-based popular support. They're kept in power by the same mechanism that the old guard is kept in power here in the United States of America, and that is crooked elections.
Yeah. The military, could you put them into the same category, that there are different opinions among the Israeli military?
Oh, there definitely is. There was somebody actually shot a documentary about some of these Israelis who were involved in these actions in the occupied territories, and these Israeli soldiers were just sitting there saying, "I have no idea why I'm here or why I'm supposed to be doing this." They're not buying into this Eretz Israel. Most Israelis, and this also extends to Jews here in the United States of America, they're seeing the behavior of Israel's government as a threat to their safety and security because of this constant provocation of all the surrounding Arab nations. And Israel was supposed to be an independent nation for the safety and security of the Jewish people. But when you look at how Israel is just needing to suck money out of the United States, out of Europe, out of everywhere else, it hardly qualifies as independent. And the aggressions of Israel's government are making the world much more dangerous for Jewish people everywhere because of this policy being followed by Israel's government to blur the lines between government agenda and the Jewish people. Israel's government holds the world's Jewish people out in front of itself as a shield. Oh, the only opposition to us is Jew hate and anti-Semitism. And Israel's government claims that they represent all of the world's Jewish people, not just those living in Israel. And so when there's a backlash from Israel's aggression, people are buying into these claims by Israel's government that somehow all of the world's Jewish people are responsible for this. And that's simply not true, and it is simply not fair, and it's getting a lot of innocent people killed and harmed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right, well, I appreciate your thoughts on it. Thank you very much.
All right, you're welcome, and we're going to switch over to Gianna in Texas. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Good afternoon, Mike. I had a couple of things, and it's a little off subject of your last caller. But you were talking about the alkaline water the other day, and I have tried that. I bought alkaline water, and I brought it home, and I pH tested it, and it was 0 alkaline.
Okay, well, you need to be very, very careful because the alkaline waters, if you're using a litmus paper, it's not going to work. The correct way to get the pH of the pH water is you have to have what's called a titration chemistry setup to go through that process. Litmus paper only works for really strong acid or really strong alkali, and when you're talking about your health, you're working in a very, very narrow range of pH. And this is an issue. If you go to the website of the alkaline waters like Essentia, which is what I use, they'll say right there, you cannot test the pH of the water with litmus paper. It has to be done in a proper titration setup.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for that information. I have one other thing.
Yes.
You had also talked about the aluminum in our diet. And I have come to believe that we've got this sudden escalation of breast cancer in women because women are using the antiperspirant, which has aluminum in it.
Yes.
I really feel that some way is connected. I've spoken.
It certainly would be. It would be an area of inquiry, and what complicates it is if your water supply is fluoridated. Fluoride causes your body to absorb more aluminum and get rid of less of it. The other problem that complicates it is the fact that the mandatory annual mammograms may have been causing more cancer than they're finding and curing.
Well, that would be about right. And one last thing, I've been wanting to run this by you. I read that in 1988, New York City became international territory and is no longer legally part of the U.S. Do you know anything about that?
I haven't heard anything about it, but there is a precedent, not for New York City as a whole, but for Wall Street. Because if you go over to London and you look at their financial district, it's actually considered to be almost an independent nation the way the Vatican is. So I don't know if that's what applies to Wall Street or not. But
well, it says New York City to the United Nations as part of the Declaration of Interdependence put in place by Bill Clinton.
The fact that it's interdependent with other cities, I mean, we've seen this program for years about the sister city program, where we have a city here on Oahu and there's sister city with a city in Japan, but nobody's going to say that we're no longer part of the United States. So I think this interdependence thing, which is part of the New World Order, getting us all dependent on people on the other side of the planet to weld us into that globalist agenda, I don't think that means New York City is not part of New York State or the United States anymore.
Okay. All right. Well, you clarified that for me again. You're my go-to guy.
Well, thank you very much for that, and we're going to let you go, and we're going to close the phone lines for a while. I got a lot of stuff to get through today here. So, we're talking about Obama's legacy. More than 1,000 Democratic seats lost in the federal government, state government, judgeships, and the White House itself. Added almost $8 trillion to the national debt. 10.7 million more Americans are now on food stamps. Oh, yeah, that's a good legacy to take into the history books there, Barry. Now, as you know, in this argument between the real media and the fake media, the real media, meaning the corporate media, is facing an uphill battle because of their horrible, horrible track record and the fact that they are trapped by their business model. These correspondents and prostitutes are paid huge amounts of money to be very convincing liars. If they stop being convincing liars, they don't get that money anymore. And looking back over this last year, the corporate media really did shoot itself in its own foot, and I have no sympathy for them. And we need to look at all this news that was coming on out about all these hate crimes that were done by Trump supporters. And it turned out they were all hoaxes. Let's just give this list. We talked about just the other day, family in Texas, car and motorcycle were burned, and garage was spray painted with the N-word lover. Turned out they did that to themselves. The so-called white supremacist arrested for burning down the black church and spray painting Vote Trump on it turned out to be a black member of the congregation itself. South Philadelphia graffiti, black bitch Trump rules, turned out to be a black man again. The young lady who fabricated a story about an attack by racists on the subway who were screaming Donald Trump. The young lady from Ann Arbor who fabricated a tale of Trump supporter threatening he'd burn her hijab off. And University of Louisiana at Lafayette. Student is now admitting she fabricated her claim that men wearing Trump hats attacked her, knocked her down, and stole her headscarf. The so-called white supremacist arrested for writing KKK and swastikas at Nassau Community College, he turned out to be black. Over at Bowling Green, student there was arrested after claiming she was attacked and taunted with racial slurs by MAGA gear-wearing Trump supporters. Another student at BGSU fabricated a story about a robbery and derogatory slur. Over in Baldwin, which is near Boston, claimed he was forced to run for his life after being threatened with a lynching by people screaming, "It's Trump country now." He admitted he fabricated that. Man in San Francisco hung a Nazi flag, trying to blame that on the Trump people, and it just goes on and on and on and on and on. Now, there's a new website, hatecrimehoax.com, which is keeping track of all of these. And you need to understand, the corporate media reported every one of these hoaxes as if it were established fact beyond all doubt. Because that's what the corporate media does. They feed you the hoaxes. They feed you the fraud. They feed you the deception. They feed you the lie. That's what they're paid to do. Now, Germany, which is going back to Nazi-esque thought police laws, are now considering fining Facebook $522,000 for every fake news item, with the German government deciding what is or is not fake. And facts be gosh darned. Now, speaking of Facebook, up in Seattle, little bit of embarrassment. We all remember Snopes.com. Snopes is one of these fact checkers that Facebook is going to be using to tell you what's true and what isn't. And it turns out the co-founder embezzled thousands of dollars from the company. One of the editors there is a former prostitute. And now Facebook itself has had another embarrassment. Dov Katz, who's the head of computer vision at Oculus Virtual Reality, which is now owned by Facebook, was arrested December 21st for trying to solicit unprotected sex from an underage girl. So, wonderful people that we have telling us what to believe and what not to believe here. Meanwhile, up in Canada, the Canadian Supreme Court has basically killed off free speech in Canada by taking the position that any speech can be silenced and punishable by law if the speech causes hate. That's it. They don't even need to look at the intent of the speaker. If it causes hate, it is banned. You can be thrown in jail for it. Now, when we come back from this next commercial break, I'm going to explain to you why this is utterly ridiculous. So we'll be back after these few words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're talking about this new law coming down from the Canadian Supreme Court that says you can be legally punished for any speech that causes hate. Your intention is irrelevant. If somebody says, oh, that's causing hate, you can go to jail. Canada used to be a nice place to live here. Now, first of all, let's be honest. Hate gets a bum rap. In our politically correct society, we are taught that it's bad to hate at all. I disagree. Hate can be a good thing. There are lots of things I hate, and I'm not ashamed to admit it. I hate liars. I hate thieves. I hate cheats. I hate drug dealers, both legal and illegal, for the harm they cause. I hate corrupt politicians. I hate child molesters. I hate those people who tortured innocent Iraqis to death to find nuclear weapons that did not exist. These are hates that are good to have. And maybe if more people allowed themselves to hate liars, thieves, druggies, torturers, and the corrupt, our nation wouldn't be in the mess that it's in. Remember what Kierkegaard said. Nothing great is accomplished without passion. And most of all, I hate those who presume to decide for us what we can and cannot see, hear, read, or think. Now, to not speak out about a crime, because the perpetrators might feel they are hated, is silly, because that's what we're talking about, crimes. Stealing land, espionage, illegal wiretaps, torture, interference with investigations. And what they're trying to do is circumvent in this country the First Amendment by claiming that any one individual anywhere on the planet who feels that your speech causes hate now has veto power over all freedom of speech. And the ridiculousness of that is illustrated perfectly by Israel, who deflects all criticism of their behavior by saying, you hate us. USS Liberty, oh, you just hate the Jews. Stealing Palestinian land, oh, you just hate the Jews. The bomb factory under Dimona, oh, you just hate the Jews. Under the Canadian law, you can go to jail talking about the attack on the USS Liberty, the secret bomb factory under Dimona, the theft of the Palestinian lands. All somebody has to stand up and say, oh, that's leading to hate. And it's a ridiculous thing as well. Can you imagine somebody trying to defend the actions of the Nazis by saying you just hate the German people? That's how absurd all of this has gotten. Freedom of speech is the most important right that we have, and we should not tolerate anybody trying to tinker with it for political gain, to shield themselves from the consequences from their illegal actions, for corporate gain. If the First Amendment protects the corporate media when they lie, the First Amendment protects the independent media when we tell you the truth. Got to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. And Mike is now in our control room, but we're still not going to take some phone calls for a while because I got a lot of news to go through. Especially considering we're coming up on a holiday, it's been a very, very busy news day. Now, turning over to Syria. Turkey and Russia have brokered a ceasefire deal for all of Syria. They're waiting for the Syrian government to sign on to it. And basically, we'll start negotiations between the Syrian government and various other political groups there. The U.S.-backed terrorists are not part of this. It's still open season on them, as well as it should be. Now, the only remaining area that the U.S.-backed terrorists are still in control of is Palmyra, and Syria is getting ready to send a 10,000-strong force into Palmyra. Meanwhile, and this is a major, major setback for the U.S., down in southern Syria, the al-Qaeda rebels have now surrendered to the Syrian army. And a lot of very ugly stuff is starting to come on out. Apparently, mass graves of torture victims have been uncovered in Aleppo. Some of them had parts of their bodies literally chopped off before they were killed. Showing that Tantrum's know no nationality, the Russian embassy in Damascus has now been shelled twice. And we are getting a report from Russia today that apparently on their way out of town, the U.S.-backed terrorists poisoned the Aleppo water supply. They don't dare drink water out of the faucets right now. They'll think they're in Flint, Michigan or something. And Russia has sent demining crews into Aleppo, and they're discovering weapons made in the United States of America and in Germany. So what went wrong in Syria? Story coming out of the original antiwar.com. How did they blunder this? And basically, it was when the U.S. wanted to just launch an outright invasion, they couldn't get the popular support. Because we all remembered how we were lied to about Saddam's nuclear weapons. And so we weren't buying it that Assad was gassing his own people with chemical weapons, especially after the United Nations chemical weapons inspectors came on out and said, no, it's the U.S.-backed rebels. So that's when they decided to mount this covert program of supplying ISIS and al-Qaeda with weapons. It was covert back then. Now it's over. The U.S. government is openly saying, yeah, we're going to give ISIS and al-Qaeda man-pad, shoulder-fired missiles. What are you going to do about it? But Syria is a catastrophic failure. It's crippling this agenda of dominating all the oil-rich areas of the Middle East to keep the dollar propped up. Turkey's Erdogan is now claiming he has rock-solid evidence, photos, videos, paperwork, that the U.S. is backing ISIS. And that gets us back to Yves Chandelon, the chief NATO auditor, because now the report is coming on out, this is over in Conservative Daily Post, that he had uncovered the financing chain by which the U.S. had been supplying ISIS and al-Qaeda. And there's nothing new about this. We got confirmation from this from the leaked emails We got it from documents pried loose by Judicial Watch. At the same time, the U.S. government and that corporate media were telling you that ISIS and Al-Qaeda were our enemies in the war on terror, President Obama and then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton were sending weapons to ISIS and Al-Qaeda. That meets the legal definition of treason. Now, down in Iraq, the fighting is still going on there around Mosul, and there may be a major problem about to happen. You might actually want to fire up Google Earth and go look at the city of Mosul and then follow the Tigris River to the northwest, where you will see the Mosul Dam. Apparently, it is structurally weak. It was built on a poor foundation, and it's fragile. And now, ISIS and the Iraqi forces are basically fighting a battle for that dam. And if that dam were to get hit with any kind of large explosives, it could very easily collapse. It would send a 45-foot wave hundreds of miles downstream. And if there wasn't adequate warning and evacuation, it could kill 1.5 million people if it collapses. And remember World War II, busting people's dams. Oh, that was just great fun. So that could be a really bad problem. Now, Obama is getting ready to announce economic sanctions and covert cyber ops against Russia for the hacking of the American election. We're going to take a moment here to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just rejoining the network. So Obama is out there basically screaming that Russia hacked the election, and you need to remember there is as much evidence that Russia interfered with the U.S. election as there was evidence that Saddam actually had nuclear weapons, meaning none. None at all. But Obama's out there saying, we're going to hit them with cyber ops because they hacked our elections. And it's just as phony, again, as Saddam's nukes or Assad's sarin gas. And we need to keep in mind the possibility of a false flag. As I mentioned earlier in the show, the war party is desperate to get a war going and get it past the point of no return before Trump can take office. One possibility is a virtual 9/11, and we've written and talked about this before, in which the United States would take down the Internet and say it was all the fault of those evil Russians and Chinese. And that would certainly get rid of the problem of the independent media as far as they're concerned. Oh, we can only bring up the websites for the corporate media and everybody else has to stay on out there. The economic blowback from shutting down the Internet would be devastating. This last retail season, one of the reasons the shopping malls are in such trouble is people stayed home. They didn't want to get caught up in all those riots and these melees at the stores where people were beating each other up to get a pair of shoes. But he's still out there pushing, Russia bad, Russia bad, Russia bad, and it does feel very much like the propaganda campaign we were seeing in the run-up to 9/11. Meanwhile, Senators John McCain and Lindsey Graham are pushing for a new conflict with Russia. We've got to show them we're tough. Okay, John and Lindsey, here are your rifles. Here are your parachutes. Here's your day-glow orange jumpsuits left over from the CIA's torture center. Have fun. We'll tell Putin you're on your way. So, now then, let's talk about what's going on with Israel. It is rather absurd to see the government of Israel, and in particular Benjamin Netanyahu, arguing a position that Israel has a right to violate international law and that everybody else is wrong for saying you're violating international law, and more to the point that the United States was wrong not to veto the Security Council resolution saying Israel is in violation of international law. That's the position Israel's government and Netanyahu are trying to sell, and they're not getting any traction with it. And the harder they push it, the more ridiculous Israel's government is looking around the world. Childish, throwing a tantrum. They're acting like spoiled brats. Netanyahu's out there trying to say, God blesses our stealing land from the Palestinians. You don't want to go against God. Now, basically, John Kerry came on out and gave a speech today and for once really ripped into Israel and said Israel has to face up to some hard facts. There has to be a two-state solution for what's going on. Palestine has as much a right to exist as Israel does, and Israel's government doesn't want to hear that. Now, as you know, the other day, Netanyahu was saying that Israel is going to reevaluate its relationship to the United Nations, and Israel is going to cut off some funding that they've been giving to the United Nations for certain programs, and they basically got a big yawn, because at this point, most of the people in the United Nations would be perfectly happy if Israel quit. And Israel really wasn't throwing that much money into the UN anyway, so that wasn't a valid threat. So now we're hearing, this is from Fox News no less, Israel's ambassador to the United States is now demanding the United States stop funding the United Nations. They are behaving like spoiled children. And it gets even worse than that. Israel has signaled to New Zealand that United Nations resolution amounts to a declaration of war. That they actually use that word. Apparently, Israel's attitude is that when somebody says you must obey international law, that's a declaration of war. Yeah, I can just see Israel going up against all those Maoris. Those are tough people down there. Now, Israel was screaming about New Zealand. Israel was screaming about how this was all Obama's fault. And as usual, the government of Israel is ill-informed because we are getting from Gilad Atzmon that apparently Great Britain was the one who encouraged these other nations to move forward with this resolution even after Egypt was bribed or threatened or blackmailed to drop out. And I think what we're seeing here is basically the beginning of the global community finally saying, we've had enough of Israel, and they're whining. We're sick and tired of hearing about the history of World War II because none of us were alive when that happened. Israel's cabinet minister calling Kerry's speech pathetic. They're down to name-calling. You're pathetic. You hate the Jews. You're an anti-Semite. Blah, 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 blah. Now, Israel apparently blinked at one point because they announced they were that the Knesset was going to postpone the vote on the new Jerusalem settlement homes. Then they turned right around and approved more settler building in East Jerusalem in a different neighborhood. They just went on out and said, we're going to grab this one here. And they did that ahead of Kerry's speech. Just out there, the message from Israel's government is, we're going to do what we want to do, and you cannot stop us. And I am concerned, as many people are, that Trump is sending signals that he's pro-Israel, but then he wouldn't have been elected if he said, I'm anti-Israel. But I think Trump is going to look at this behavior from a business-like point of view and realize that you can't really reach an agreement. They won't keep their side of the bargain. And coming out of the world of business, Donald Trump sets a great store in the keeping of one's word. So, anyway, moving on to the economic news here. And I guess we're going to go ahead and open the phone lines at this point. Make sure that Mike gets that. More and more people concerned about the pension panic, where public sector workers all across the United States, these state-run pensions are in trouble. They all got suckered into investing in the mortgage-backed securities back in 2008. When that fraud collapsed, they're all defunded. And all of these workers who trusted that these were risk-free investments because the government was running this thing, People who entrusted the government to manage their life savings are going to wind up destitute. And it's not just the pensions. Social Security is broke. It's been looted by past presidential administrations, in particular President Bill Clinton, who just took that cash buildup for the baby boomers, moved it into the general ledger, and spent it as general revenues. And they can't put it back. Now, over in India, as you know, India is being used as a test case for the idea of a cash-free society. They're banning cash. They're slowly moving people onto the plastic. They've now actually started banning gold and confiscating gold. This in a nation that at one time was the world's leading consumer marketplace for gold. They loved their bracelets and everything, and that's all gone away here. And Raja M. Na, in an article that came out of the Real News, is saying demonetization has adversely impacted both manufacturing and agricultural growth in India, and how this cash stringency is forcing companies to reduce labor costs and reduce the income of the working class, because now that all the money flows through the banks are collecting fees on it. You don't need to pay your workers all of the money, just pay them most of it, and we get the rest for processing it for you. And as a plus, there can't be a run on the bank when the bank collapses, because there's no way we can give you your wealth in a portable store of value. And that's the real reason for the push for the cashless society, to force you to be dependent on the banks for all of your daily commerce, to lock your money into that bank so that when the bank gets in trouble, the bank can use your money and you cannot. These banks are not thinking about you, the customer, and probably the biggest proof of that right now is the European Central Bank just lowered Deutsche Bank's capital requirements. Why? So Deutsche Bank could pay very generous end-of-the-year bonuses to their executives. Just change the rules. Yeah, we got to take care of those executives. Delta has now canceled a $4 billion order for 18 Boeing 787 Dreamliners in response to falling airfares. Just like anything else in the economy, if you don't have ordinary people with the money to buy the goods, services, or travel, then the structure above them has to come crashing down here. Toshiba shares have plummeted after warning of billions in losses. And now Europe, despite the problems they're seeing over in India, Europe is now proposing confiscation of gold. You ordinary slaves and serfs are no longer allowed to have gold because we're cracking down on terrorist financing. No, this has nothing to do with terror. The cashless society is about forcing you to leave your money trapped inside the banks. And that only works if there's no portable store of value available to the public. And that's why every single nation starting to work towards a cashless society is banning private ownership of gold, and soon it'll be silver as well. And I'd like to remind everybody that the Nazis confiscated gold too. All right, let's grab a phone call. Sherry from South Central Texas. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. Thank you very much. This is about hate and why it needs to be in the world. I'm so glad you brought this up, because we should never be told how to think and feel, ever. We need to hear all sides of an issue, negative, positive. This is one of three things I wanted to point out, so we can determine where we stand. To find the truth, you need to use your brain, you need to hear all sides. You have to hear the hate, you have to hear the love. That's all part of living in the world. And number two, how are we going to get some benefit from our lives and our experiences in life if we don't exercise our free will? We all need free will. It's natural. We need it.
Yes.
And three, everyone should know how it feels to be discriminated against, so we can be aware of hate's effect. I've had that, being a Californian living in Texas and working with this German lady that was a little off. And I felt it, and there is nothing that feels worse than discrimination. They just want to turn your back on you because you're not the creme de la creme, quote, unquote. And
well, the big problem I have right now is all of a sudden somebody has declared by imperial edict that discrimination against white people is okay. And we're seeing these professors saying, oh, it's time for a white genocide. And the liberals are saying the world will be beautiful if we can just get rid of all the straight white males. And unfortunately, Sherry, I'm going to have to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. Let's grab a couple more phone calls, then we'll do some more news. Steve in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Just wanted to address the female that called in about the antiperspirant, the deodorant, and the aluminum, and the causation possibly that may be causing breast cancer. And in my study, in my research, I'm not 100% positive, but I think there's causation. And knowing that there's about approximately 25 lymph nodes in the axillary region, that's your armpit region.
Yes. And
the breast tissue aside of that, which is fatty breast tissue, I think what we might be seeing is an accumulation of aluminum in the fatty tissue, which may then lead to breast cancer. That's just my personal opinion on that.
No, I mean, anybody who's studied anatomy understands the very close linkage between the lymph nodes in the underarm area and the breast tissue. And the problem is, these days, you can't find any funding for research into the possible harm caused by any commercial products. The research money is all there to say that they're safe and effective and you've got nothing to worry about. And as we found out from that CDC report on vaccines and autism, the reports are being faked and rigged. And at this point, I think, just avoiding chemicals in general, especially those with a metallic base, just seems to make common sense to me. It's certainly the way Claire and I live our lives.
I agree. It does take a little bit of work. I hope she's listening right now. It does take a little work to find an antiperspirant, a deodorant that doesn't have aluminum, but you can find them. They're out there. I saw one at Walmart, and that's what I've been using. It says on there no aluminum. So I suggest if she's listening, cut that aluminum out of your deodorant, your antiperspirant, and get a no aluminum. Yeah,
I think she's using one like that. I think we had to. We had to order it online too, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I sent you just an email a little bit ago about Vera Rubin. I think her last name is Rubin. She just passed away. She was a scientist. Look for your email on that.
Okay, yeah, I have a few comments about that theory as well. All right, Steve, we're going to let you go. We're going to take Ty in Wisconsin. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, do you mind if I promote my Facebook page and YouTube channel? Because what I'm going to say, I want people to be able to go there, and then you can hear more elaboration on it.
Well, can you sort of give us a summary of what it's all about?
All right. Well, I simply want to explain that geographical Israel is not on the heart of God more than any other nation, okay? However, the seed of Abraham, when we're talking about Israel, if you're a Christian, or those that believe in the Bible, I know a lot of your audience does, if you simply go into Galatians chapter 3, it says that the seed of Abraham is Christ, okay?
Okay, well, again, I hate to cut you off here, and I don't know why all of a sudden...
that happens all the time on Republic.
Okay. I don't know why all of a sudden I'm getting all these people calling into the show to fling Bible verses at me, but this is a show about politics, and there's some science thrown in there, and again, everybody who's out there on the planet with a sword in their hand, stealing land from somebody else, can always point to some piece of parchment and say, God says it's okay for me to do this. And obviously from that last comment Ty made, he's been a problem for some of the other hosts here on RBN. Okay, so we're going to take a moment to catch up on the news here. We're finishing up on the economic news. Pending home sales dropped to a 10-month low in November. People are not buying houses. Those inflated housing... There was another real estate bubble. And even worse, there was a rental bubble. We were hearing about, these studio apartments in San Francisco going for $5,000. And as it turned out, those apartments were sitting empty because people don't have that kind of money here. Now, there's a very revealing, I would say alarming article. It's over in the Daily Mail. And it's entitled The Shanty Towns of America. You might want to look for it on the main page of WhatReallyHappened.com. And it's a photo essay of how America's homeless are living now, all across the country. And as you look at these pictures, then you do a Yandex search for photos from the Depression of the 1930s, except for the fact that these are in color and the 1930s ones are pretty much in black and white. It's the same scenes all over again. And our prior administrations that are talking about how wonderful our economy is ought to be ashamed of the reality that they have brought to the people of the United States of America. Plenty of money for Israel, plenty of money for war, no money for the American people. That has to change. We'll be right back. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking about this article in the Daily Mail where they have done a photographic essay of the reality of what life has become in the United States of America. And they have documented all these homeless people all across the country, living underground, living under bridges. And I hold that the true measure of any society is how they treat the most disadvantaged. And in the current United States of America, under the control of the money junkies, our most disadvantaged are being made war on, effectively. Governments are just trying to shoo them along. It's bad for the tourists to see them camped out down in Waikiki, instead of dealing with the reality that the unemployment numbers coming from the government are a complete fiction. We have more than 90 million legal American citizens willing and able to work who have not been able to find jobs for months, if not years. It makes a mockery of Obama's claim that he is leading America's economic recovery. Because after all, the stock market's doing good. The people on Wall Street are doing really well. What more could you want? I want all Americans to be fed and housed is what I want. I realize that's a heretical view, but that's what I want. We're also seeing another story. This came out of Yahoo.com, where more and more Americans are now retiring outside the United States. They want to get away from the overregulation. A lot of places outside the U.S. are more attractive economically. A lot of people going down to Panama, Costa Rica, places like that, where you can live much better on your money than you can here in the United States. Speaking of overregulation, the other day we were talking about how up in Oregon there was this couple bought a 10-acre piece of land with a home, and it has a pond on it that's been there for 40 years, was a major plus for the property, its most attractive feature, and the government has come on in and said, you've got to fill in the pond. You don't own that water. The government owns that water. You've got to fill it on in. If you want water, go buy it from Nestle. And, of course, that is going to negatively impact the value of their home. That pond was a big part of it. Their mortgage is going to be underwater, meaning that without that pond, the assessed value of that home is now going to be much lower, possibly lower than the amount of money they owe on the mortgage. So today, we actually had a little dose of that overregulation nonsense ourselves. Earlier today, Claire and I went down to the local drugstore, and Claire wanted to get some nail polish remover because she wanted to remove the nail polish and trim her nails back, because now that I've restrung her harp, she's starting to play the harp again, and you can't do that with long nails. And we get to the cash register, and the clerk there demands to see Claire's ID, because apparently nail polish remover is now restricted. That's the word they used. It's restricted. Really? Does somebody think that I'm going to, attack a total stranger and remove their nail polish? And apparently the issue is that nail polish remover contains acetone, which can be used to manufacture illegal drugs. There's only a couple of problems with that. The other chemicals that are in the nail polish remover are toxic. You're not going to be making any illegal drugs with nail polish remover because you will die or you'll get very, very sick. And I remember a while back wanting to get some pure ethyl alcohol to use as lens cleaner on optics, my telescopes and so forth. And I was told that's restricted, has to be denatured. And the denatured alcohol, whatever it was they put in there to denature it, left this film on the glass that basically rendered it unusable. And it turned out all of this stuff was nonsense because you can go to the liquor store and buy bottles of Everclear, which is nothing but pure ethyl alcohol. So I got a bottle of that, mixed it 50-50 with distilled water, and I got all the lens cleaner I could ever use. And you can go to the hardware store and buy cans of acetone. This is just this constant creep of bureaucracy that interferes with our life, inconveniences us, and accomplishes absolutely nothing. When I was with my first wife, I got exposed to a little bit of the world of illicit drug trafficking. And I can tell you right now, they don't, in point of fact, go to the store and get little tiny bottles of nail polish remover or anything else to make their product. They just have the big bulk containers shipped in by the CIA to make whatever it is they're going to be making. And it really is ridiculous, but it justifies some bureaucrat's salary. Some congressman's nephew, twice removed, needed a job. Well, we're going to deal with the scourge of nail polish remover. I mean, it really is ridiculous here. The only part of our economy that is doing really well is public relations, which is being paid to lie to the American people. That's a booming business. The other one, of course, is weapons sales. And it turned out that in 2015, last year, the U.S. was number one worldwide in weapons sale at $40 billion of mechanized death that was sold all around the world. And the largest purchasers were developing nations, Qatar, for example, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and they're using it on the Yemenites. But there's a problem there as well, because all of a sudden these countries are realizing America's weapons are overpriced, they're of inferior quality, and they are starting to cancel American contracts and go to Russia and China, who are producing superior weapons at a lower cost. Everybody got too greedy, even Boeing with the new Air Force One, and certainly that monster F-35. It's just ridiculous. Okay, we're going to go ahead and grab a phone call from Barbara in Los Angeles. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello.
Hello, you're on the air.
Yes. Yes. Can I get some help?
Well, that all depends on what help you need.
Protection from Mexican gangsters.
You need to go to the police for that.
Mm.
You need to call the police. You need to call the FBI or the DEA. I'm a talk radio host. I have absolutely nothing I can contribute to protecting you from the Mexican mafia. So I don't know if you dialed the wrong number or what's going on, but sorry, I can't help you, okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to let you go. Now then, turning to the areas of immigration, apparently Angela Merkel's ambitions to win a new term as Chancellor of Germany are fading rapidly because the right-wing anti-immigration AfD party has now moved ahead in the polls. So that is definitely a change in the wind. This New World Order, globalist blur everybody together is falling apart. And apparently up in New York, Suffolk County Sheriff Vincent DeMarco had just abandoned his sanctuary cities policy ahead of the inauguration. So the sanctuary cities are starting to shut down. This open defiance of U.S. immigration law, that's starting to go away. And we can start looking at deportations. You want to have jobs? Boy, there's an employment opportunity. Illegal immigrant hunter, refugee hunter. Now then, as you know, there was this horrible incident where this Russian passenger plane crashed, and it unfortunately killed quite a few members of Russia's Army choir, who were one of the best in the world. You can go out and find them on YouTube. They were just amazing, amazing people. And it was a horrible tragedy, and everybody's trying to speculate what's going on. But as it turns out, the flight data recorder is revealing that when the flight crew tried to extend the flaps, they didn't extend by the same amount at the same time, which is going to throw the plane into a hard roll. Now, that's what the flight data recorders are reporting. What the flight data recorder cannot reveal is, was it a simple mechanical failure, or did somebody sabotage the aircraft before it took off? So, we don't know. But we know there's been a lot of attempts to provoke Russia. All right, let's take some phone calls. Tom in Utah, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, first of all, as I understand, you were in the Hollywood crowd for a while?
Yes, I was. I spent quite a few years in film production.
Paul McCartney had me come up there and speak to about 3,000 gathered at Paramount Studios after Linda had died with breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And were you at that gala, perchance?
No, I was not. Mostly my work was around, the studios up in the valley, the Burbank studios in Universal, and mostly the early CGI shops.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I'd actually, Paul had learned about me through a friend and had me come and speak to all of his friends at that gala after Lynn had died with breast cancer. So I was going to add a little bit of understanding from the pathology lab on breast cancer, female cancers.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure people have been made aware of this, not just the aluminum as a factor, but of course a big factor is the overdosing of our public, or specifically our women, with estrogens.
And then there's also, of course, the constant X-raying for the mammograms, because we know radiation, including X-rays, can cause cancer. And the concern that was raised was that in the name of churning more revenues out of the patients with yearly mammograms, that they may have actually been giving women more cancer than the mammograms itself were actually detecting.
Yeah,
What's really interesting, though, is I remember, this is going back like maybe 15 years, there was a new approach for breast cancer screening called diaphanography, where they illuminated the tissues with infrared and used infrared sensors to look inside. But why that didn't take off, why that wasn't adopted opposed to hard X-rays, I really don't know. Maybe because they were still making payments on the X-ray machines.
Follow the money. The other thing I wanted to mention to you, I'm Jewish by ancestry,
mm-hmm.
and my relatives in Israel are fed up with being used as cannon fodder for the Zionist international banking Kabbalists, that are putting their lives at risk. In fact, some of them have been leaving Israel because of the fact that with the provocation of the Palestinians, which my relatives feel like the Palestinians have been abused and violated. And they wish that Netanyahu and all these other criminals would stop it because they'd love to live in peace.
Well, I think we'd all like to live in peace. And I mean, the history has shown that Christians, Muslims, Jews can get along just fine. But unfortunately, politicians like to create chaos and discord because that's how they sell their importance to the masses. Oh, it's a terrible world, and I will save you if you will vote for me and give me your money.
The other thing, this is just off to the side. Since I'm blind, I was assaulted after testifying in Washington.
Ouch.
On exposing a issue put in place, and I'm hoping that you have a chance or had a chance to look at my issue on that website, gassingamerica.com. That was put in place by the cabal around Henry Kissinger. But then the Clintons have, exploited or profited from this poisoning issue that I've identified in that gassingamerica.com. So when you get a chance, I really wish you would look at it. after testifying, I got assaulted and I've been left blind, broken, homeless. So I'm frustrated because I can't get into the web, and I need somebody to help me to do the research on the bill that was put in place in June 15th of 1976 to set this whole poisoning problem in motion.
Well, I remember in the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, they had all those trailer homes for the people to live in, and they were just saturated with formaldehyde, which is.
So I was a scientist. I was the scientist brought down by the deputy sheriff in New Orleans, Jesse Finneran. You can Google his name. You can see his work, but then you can see mine.
Okay.
I was the one that identified that problem and explained to them why they were losing babies and elderly even 3 years after the fact. And that's also part of that website, Gassing America.
Okay,
so
I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at it right now, and I'll go through it after the radio show is over. I'll decide then if I'm going to put it up or not. But we know that there are a lot of chemicals which are very popular with manufacturers because they're inexpensive.
Out of my labors, I got the CDC, who used to be my working partners back when I was working pathology. And it was the women of the CDC. I have to give credit to the women, the mothers and grandmothers, that pushed the man to do the investigation on that whole industry and exposed that plethora of toxins that these people are being subjected to. But you know who lives in a manufactured mobile home?
The poor.
Yeah. So you're talking about the homeless. Well, these are the next two homeless, and it is a genocidal program as far as I'm concerned. You know, I sound crazy when I say that, but the only thing that explains it, how do you deliberately do this to people? Especially
because it maximized your profits. You know, it's not a deliberate genocide. It is simply the cheapest way to make the product to maximize profitability, and that's why I keep saying this lust for these pieces of paper with ink all over them has destroyed the best qualities of what it used to be an American, which was altruistic, innovative, entrepreneurial. Anyway, listen, I'm going to have to let you go here because. We're coming up on a commercial break here right now, but I am looking at your website, and I'll probably put it up there after the show is over, okay?
Been hijacked.
All right, so
medicine has been hijacked.
Okay, we'll be right back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to take a couple more phone calls as we come up on the top of the hour. Ralph in New York City, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, hi, Mike. How you doing? I want to ask you a question. What does the budget cost for Secret Service agents to protect politicians a year? Is there a survey what it costs to protect presidents and former presidents?
I imagine there probably is some place. I don't have those figures off the top of my head, but I do know that Donald Trump has his own private security from a Russian company operating.
That's going in the White House.
Yeah, he's keeping him going into the White House, and he should.
Wow.
Because Trump has got so many, he's got as many elements of our current establishment opposed to him as John F. Kennedy did.
Wow, so it's even worse than Kennedy.
Well, the threat to his life is probably equal to that of John F. Kennedy.
Wow, I thought Obama was when he first came in the White House.
Obama was in danger, or Obama was a threat?
Well, I'm just saying, as his security detail when he came into the White House, it was more, instead of budget for Secret Service, was much more updated more than any other president since he came in, or Trump will be double than that?
I don't have those numbers. It's definitely going to be worth looking at. I think one of the reasons that Donald Trump has hired this Russian company is because the performance of the Secret Service during the Obama years has been abysmal. The White House was shot at. They didn't even realize it for 4 days. There was that guy who hopped the fence, got into the East Room. And to be very honest, I wasn't very impressed with the Secret Service who checked out Claire and I all those years ago during Christmas when we were handing out food to the hungry and homeless. And then there was that ugly incident where one of these agents got into an argument with a local guy at the McDonald's down in Waikiki and shot him. So I think probably Trump is looking at the current Secret Service as not being an effective force. And we're even hearing from the Secret Service itself, they're having trouble recruiting people, good people.
Oh, wow. So there's a crisis.
Well, there's definitely a crisis, and Trump has already fixed it. Now, that being said, whether it was Secret Service or Trump's detail, they did protect him during the sort of half-hearted attacks on him. The guy who jumped the line with the knife, the guy in Texas who grabbed the security guard's gun. There was that other incident where they hustled him off the stage. And again, that was Trump's private security, not the Secret Service protective detail.
Wow, because the NYPD is basically guarding Trump Tower here in New York City, and Mayor Bill de Blasio wants to bill him $35 million for budget overcost. Now, how would that detail work out between the mayor and this incoming president coming now? Would that be just write him a check or what?
I imagine there'll be an appropriation there because after January 20th and Donald Trump is not there at Trump Tower, then the normal security that all such buildings have will be sufficient. And at that point, I'm sure they'll work out some kind of an arrangement. But if de Blasio is upset about the cost of the security, then he should be talking to all the crybaby snowflakes and buttercups who are out there doing dumb stunts like leaving packages to get the bomb squad out there. And perhaps they should be getting the bills for all of this extra security that's needed. Anyway, listen, Ralph, got to let you go. Got to take a break for station identification, and we'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Hour number 3, and the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, and we're going to go to Andy in Texas. Aloha, Andy. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, hey, Mike. How are you today?
I'm doing fine.
Well, hey, you know what? I hate to be the guy who beats the wolf to death here, but I just want to put let's get back to this emergency situation. Let's talk about, okay, all the people who took a sigh of relief and they went back to their normal life after Donald Trump was elected and whatnot. Well, A, number one, we haven't got him into office, and B, number two, he's not the savior, and C, number three, This thing is just starting right now, my friend. It's not over with. We need to be more vigilant now than ever in our entire lives right now, because this is a very dangerous moment that we're living in, and these people have so much going on in the world with their water poisoning plan, their food poisoning plan, and everything else that they're doing to keep us stupid and dumbed down. They're not going to end it that quick and that easy. So, like you were saying earlier, that he does need to have his own security. He does need to have all this, but he's still not the answer to all of our problems.
No, he isn't, and nobody ever said that he was going to be. I mean, Donald Trump by himself is not going to be able to accomplish anything at all. He's dealing with an obstructionist Congress. He's dealing with a hostile, adversarial corporate media. And Donald Trump, if he's going to accomplish what we need him to accomplish, we, the American people, are going to have to stand shoulder to shoulder with him, glaring through those windows into the offices of the senators and the representatives to send them a message. Okay? You work for we, the people. You don't work for Israel. You don't work for the military-industrial complex. You don't work for big pharma. You don't work for the oil companies. You work for us, or next election will do to you what we just got done doing to Hillary. And they need to get that message. And they're listening. Because the 2016 election was a real wake-up call. They don't have a lock on power.
Well, this whole thing with this fake news and whatnot, I mean, they really went out on a limb with this, because you can verify everything that RBN says and GCN says and all these other corporations that are talking the truth. We can verify this stuff. All we simply have to do is look it up and make sure that it's all true. And really, you know, I've done that so often, I trust the radio stations that I listen to, and RBN is one of the biggest ones that I trust, and I listen so much to you guys. But the thing is that there's not everybody listening to you guys. If there was, you'd be making a big chunk of money right now.
No, it's not. It isn't. It's not going to happen, okay? None of us are going to make a huge fortune here telling the truth. It doesn't matter how big our audience is. The people with the big bucks don't feel they need to write big paychecks for somebody to tell the public the truth. The big checks go to those who are very convincing liars, like Brian Williams, who even caught lying, he's still pulling down millions of dollars a year in salary.
Well, but this is, I mean, we're here. We got them. We got them in our pockets right now. And
we got them on the run. We got them on the run. I hesitate to say that they're in our pockets right now. There's going to be a pushback, and I foresee there will be an attempt to shut down some independent media website on the grounds that it's fake news. and it's going to have to go all the way to the United States Supreme Court to say, we're covered by the First Amendment, our news is real, the corporate media demonstrably has a long history of lies, fraud, and deception committed against the American people, and we're going to have to basically say that First Amendment still protects us.
Well, and Mr. AJ from GCN, he's already suing some people right now, and I find that
for him.
To be very fascinating.
Good for him.
Yeah,
He's not the only one. He's not the only one. A lot of the websites that were smeared by the Washington Post claiming we're all part of Russian intelligence, they're all filing lawsuits, and if they go class action, I certainly intend to sign on to it as well.
And I think you should, and I think RBN should be a front runner in that, along with GCN and all these other networks that have been delivering the truth to us, trying to wake us up. Boy, we have been in a stupor, and boy, this year we just found out that a lot of people woke up and they realized what this trash person, Hillary Clinton, and the Clinton Foundation, and these Lindsey Grahams and John McCain's and all these people that have, and how they got elected is just irrelevant to me. I know it's a fraud. I mean, why would you keep? This is the definition of insanity. You keep electing the same people over and over again, expecting a different reality. I mean, come on.
That's why I couldn't understand why the Democrats reelected Nancy Pelosi, given her epic failings during this last period. But apparently she's got the goods on people. She knows all the dark, dirty secrets. And for me, certainly my focus after Donald Trump is securely and safely in that White House, my focus is going to be building support for a complete teardown and overhaul of our nation's election system. And we're going to have a sympathetic White House on this issue, because Donald Trump knows he became the president despite the election fraud. He's not going to want to face that same problem 4 years from now, and he's going to be fully on board with getting us an election system that is honest, fair, and transparent. And so that's going to be a big part of my push for the next 2 years until the midterm elections. We're going to take a second here to do a shout-out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. Anything else, Andy?
Well, let's just talk about Jill Stein for a minute. Not Jill Stein, but Dianne Feinstein from California.
Yes.
I mean, she's the biggest advocate for taking our weapons away and stuff. And so this woman obviously has never read the Constitution, nor does she understand that the Bill of Rights are irrevocable. You can't do nothing to those rights. Those rights are ours. They're ours forever.
Well, unfortunately, part of the liberal philosophy is that individuals have no rights, only privileges that the government hands out. And by the way, Dianne Feinstein herself carries concealed. So, I mean
exactly, that's my point.
Yeah, that's the scope of her hypocrisy. And Dianne Feinstein is fully on board with this idea of a two-tiered society. There are the elites who are allowed to have guns and all the goodies and everything, and then there's everybody else who exists only to give them wealth and power.
Well, that's all I got there, boss. Keep up the good work. RBN's my station. I love you guys. You take care of yourself, bro.
Certainly will. Thank you very much here. And let's go to Dorothy in Pennsylvania. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi. Aloha. Have antidepressants actually been linked to problems with impulse control?
Very much so. You need to go over to a website called ssristories.org. And it has all of these documented cases of people who were perfectly normal behaving individuals until they were placed on these medications, and then their behavior starts getting very, very bizarre. And the only time it breaks into the corporate media is when one of these people shoots up a shopping mall or a movie theater or a school. But the reality is it appears to be a continuum, and there's a lot of behavior that seems linked to these medications that isn't newsworthy, such as the per capita increase in domestic violence, the increase in police brutality, the increase in pedophilia. For all we know, that's linked to that as well. We don't know. There's no actual research going on because in this day and age, the only funding is for research that supports the selling of a product. And there's almost no funding for anybody saying, hey, this might actually be dangerous.
I totally agree with you. There should be funding for that. But my concern is, now what if people use this as a Twinkie defense and say, oh, well, my antidepressants made me, do this.
They
and then
very possibly could. They very possibly could. In fact, if I recall correctly, there's one case in ssristories.org where apparently a court ruled that somebody was not guilty because they were under the influence of antidepressants. I forget the specifics in the case, but I know it's actually already exists as a legal precedent.
Oh, my gosh. That's scary. Well, thank you for taking my call.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We're going to let you go. And, I understand when there's something like a Twinkie defense or everything, some people will try and take advantage of it. But if in point of fact, these medications that are tinkering with your brain chemistry are causing this behavior, it's an issue that has to be looked at. And it ought to be looked at, especially in light of all the violence. Virtually every one of these mass shooters wagged at us by the gun grabbers were either on or withdrawing from prescription antidepressants. Now, more recently, the government has taken to withholding the medical records of these shooters because it's a problem for the pharmaceutical industry. Over in Connecticut, following Sandy Hook, there was a group that filed under the state's equivalent of the Freedom of Information Act to find out what medications Adam Lanza was on. And there was even a video about this thing where an attorney for the medical examiner's office, Patrick Quanachet, came on in saying that even if in this one case the medications caused Adam Lanza's violence, that wasn't important for the public to know because it might discourage them from taking medications prescribed to them by their physicians. And if you look at how much of Connecticut's economy is built around the pharmaceutical industry, you'll understand why there was a concern. And Patrick Quanachet was wrong on a major point. It isn't just that one case that we have seen this linkage before. So there's an issue there that has to be looked at. And we need to basically pull back from this money junkie dominated thinking where it's okay to sell anything to the public as long as it makes a fast buck. We have to get back to an area of balance where we take pride in the fact that we're making good products, safe products, healthy products. And we need to restore product liability to a lot of this stuff. That's where this nation really went wrong, is the government saying that certain selected industries are no longer financially liable for the harm they might cause. Vaccine industry being one of them, computers and software being another. Okay, getting on back, finishing up on the economy. I guess it was not a real good holiday shopping season after all. Sears and Kmart have announced another round of store closings. And by the way, when Claire and I were down at the mall earlier, it was not crowded. Nobody's showing up at the after-Christmas sales. So let's talk now about human-caused global warming, because if you want to talk about fake news, there it is. Anybody who says there's no such thing as a wide-ranging conspiracy to defraud the public, we've got one, staked out naked on the ground for you to study and learn from. And it involved the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the Hadley Climate Research Unit at the University of East Anglia, NASA, NOAA, the British Met Office, Penn State, New Zealand Meteorological Office, and all of these so-called scientific educational channels and magazines that were pushing this stuff all along. Remember back in 2000, snowfalls are now a thing of the past. And one of the biggest lies they had was 97% of the world's climate scientists are in agreement humans are warming the Earth. And the reality is that most of the people that were on that list weren't climate scientists. Many of them did not give their permission to be put on that list. And the bottom line is science is not consensus, and consensus is not science. That's from Michael Crichton. If they're talking consensus, they're talking politics. And there's a good illustration of that. Galileo. When he was out there saying that the Earth, in fact, orbits the sun, the consensus of the day was Galileo was wrong. So the consensus is very often wrong, historically provably wrong, because of the way knowledge is discovered and then spreads through society. Before everyone can be right, one person must be right. And while that one person is right, everybody else is wrong. And that is something you need to keep in mind. Now, despite all the snow and ice that is coming down all over the Northern Hemisphere, and even down in Australia, Tasmania got hit with a summer snowstorm, caught them completely by surprise. We are still seeing this claim from the World Meteorological Organization that 2016 remains on track to be the hottest year on record. Now, it's important to understand something. The World Meteorological Organization is just like the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. It is not a scientific body. It is a political organization. Now, the reality on the ground, despite promises in 2000, snowfalls are now a thing of the past, up in Cody, Montana, it was so cold, the snowplows were getting stuck. 65 degrees below zero. That's how cold it was. New England is looking at a major blizzard coming on in. They're predicting huge amounts of snow. They're warning of extensive travel disruptions according to AccuWeather. And here is where it gets really, really interesting. Story out of PatriotRising.com. The source for the claim that 2016 is the hottest year on record is coming from a U.S. government agency and is being promoted by the corporate media. And it's all coming out of NOAA, and outside people are looking at NOAA's report, claim, and they're seeing how NOAA is doing data adjustments. We have to correct the data. We have to normalize it. How much are they normalizing it by? By the exact same amount they claim the warming is happening. The U.S. is not warming. 2016 was not a hot year. It is yet another made-up claim by the U.S. government to trick you out of carbon taxes, trick you into obedience. There was a satellite some years ago, the NOAA 16 satellite, put up there to measure global temperatures, and it was saying, oh, it's hot, 10 degrees above normal, 10 degrees above normal. And outsiders pointed out the data coming from NOAA 16's satellite didn't match measurements taken on the ground. It was off by 10 degrees in favor of Al Gore. And NOAA was forced to delete the data sets from their own server, but the global warming carbonazis still refer to it all the time. NOAA says it was getting 10 degrees warm. But NOAA's already deleted the data because the satellite malfunctioned. They're fudging the records. Now, let's talk about computers and security, which is becoming a major issue, especially in this day and age of the war between the corporate media and the independent media. Again, attacks on our servers, attempts to plant nonsense on us. Remember, the other side loves to play dirty. They think it's their divine right to play dirty. It's okay for us to lie, cheat, and steal. We're the government. We're corporations. We don't have to play by the normal moral and ethical guidelines you mere human beings have to play by. But there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, and it has to do with one of the numerous programs to spy on you by the U.S. government, and it was called Project Hemisphere, and it was actually revealed all the way back in 2013 in, I kid you not, the New York Times. It was buried on the inside, that's why nobody noticed it. But this Project Hemisphere was developed in secret by AT&T and the U.S. Department of Justice as a tool to help with drug enforcement task forces. But it was used as a mass surveillance tool against innocent individuals. And drug criminals, terrorists, organized crime spies do not use the regular telecommunication systems because they know it's compromised. So it was a huge waste of money. It didn't really accomplish anything, and of course it's a violation of the Fourth Amendment. Well, now a judge has ordered the Department of Justice to release information on Project Hemisphere and who it targeted. And apparently, as of next month, the U.S. intelligence community is going to be releasing information on how many Americans were under surveillance. And I can't tell you how disappointed I'm going to be if I'm not on that list. We'll be right back. Hello, hi America. Welcome back to the show. And we're talking about how a judge has just ordered the U.S. government to disclose how many innocent, law-abiding Americans have been under surveillance, each and every case a violation of the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution. And the reason this is so infuriating, it's not just a violation of the Fourth Amendment, it's a violation of the Fifth Amendment. And I'm not talking about the part about self-incrimination. Read all the way to the bottom of the Fifth Amendment where it says, your property cannot be taken and used by the government without just compensation. Well, how is all this electronic surveillance being done? Using your computer, using your internet bandwidth, using your hard drive storage space, your compute cycles, your electricity. Is the government compensating you for this use of your property? No, they are not. And it may seem like a minor point, other than it illustrates how our current regime has a complete and utter disregard for the Constitution. Remember what George Bush said about it's a blankety blank piece of paper? He's wrong, of course. It's parchment. But the American people, need to adopt a zero-tolerance policy. If the government is not keeping their half of the contract with America, which is that Constitution and that Bill of Rights, then they're not a legitimate legal government. And we should not tolerate any of these abuses any longer. And if the government cannot respect our privacy, we are all perfectly justified in taking steps to protect our own privacy. Developing our own encryption, which I proved was easy to do with my NSA challenges. And we have a legitimate reason to guard our data from a government that cannot be trusted with it. And again, I refer back to that Asia-Pacific Economic Conference up in Seattle that was scandalized when it came on out that U.S. government agents on taxpayer time were breaking into the computers of conference attendees, not to fight crime, not to stop terror, but to steal business secrets, which were then given to President Bill Clinton's cronies. It's called corporate espionage. And to give you one example of how that can work, obviously if you can steal a formula for something, or a process for something, or even just find out what your competition is bidding for a contract, so you can underbid them by just a little tiny amount and win that contract. And that's not what the FBI and the CIA and the NSA are supposed to be doing. And as I was explaining on a phone call just yesterday, when I was working as a visual effects producer on Lost, and I had to go through an airport, and I had my work laptop with me, on which were photos of the production that had not been cleared for publication by the producers. And they'd show up on some fan website run by somebody who knew a TSA agent. And I got in serious trouble because of that. According to Edward Snowden, that data center up in Utah is the world's largest collection of amateur porn. We have a right to privacy. We should stand firm on that and take whatever steps it takes to guard our privacy, because the government doesn't have any business looking into our lives absent actual evidence that we're doing something wrong. Oh my goodness, they bought nail polish remover. They've got to be druggies. You know, I actually get very nervous every time I make a new batch of nanosilver, which is perfectly legal, but it does involve chemistry ware and a power supply and all the rest of it. I dread some uneducated moron cop walking past the window looking and seeing the beakers and then kicking down my door, because they don't know what they're looking at. TSA, 2 occasions. Little story from Inside Lost. On 2 occasions, TSA opened exposed negative, despite the label saying cleared to ship without inspection. Destroyed days of production on the show. We'll be right back. Hello, hi, America. Welcome back to the show. We're talking about computers. We're talking about surveillance. We're talking about cybercrime. And as we've already mentioned many times on this program, the problem of ransomware is spinning completely out of control. And I guess the boys over at the NSA are too busy abusing themselves to all those pictures of naked people they're stealing from your computers to do anything about it, because it has really skyrocketed. It's become a major problem. And now, apparently, there is ransomware that infects your smart TVs. In particular, LG, and this is a story that came out of bleepingcomputer.com, where apparently semantic researchers have discovered that there is ransomware that is infecting LG smart TVs. Apparently it's based on the Android code, and they discovered it's very easy to install and almost impossible to get out, even for somebody who's an expert. And apparently the smart TVs are regularly targeted by ransomware, and you have to send in bitcoins or whatever all else to get your TV to work again. At this point, I am really starting to miss the TV set that just had the 2 knobs on it, off on volume and the channel selector. I'm really beginning to miss that. The one with the glass glowing things in the back. And even on a lesser level of annoyance, I'm really tired of watching TV and having something come up that says, boom, your Smart Hub has finished updating. Do you wish to start now? No, I was in the middle of watching a movie, and you just hid the revelation of the, who it was who committed the crime, and now I got to watch the show all over again to find out. I mean, it's really kind of abusive. And I hate lower thirds. I hate popovers that show up on the screen that tell you what the next program is going to be. To me, and this is old school, it sort of erodes the experience of being able to sort of focus in on the entertainment that you are looking at instead of having all this stuff fluff all over. And again, here's the question. Where's the NSA in all of this? Ransomware is a huge problem. It is endangering people's lives because of the targeting of hospital medical systems, under the theory that the hospitals will pay the ransom without hesitation in order to get the medical records back for the patients before somebody makes a mistake. Why is this not worthy of the notice of the NSA or the FBI? Is the NSA behind the ransomware? Is ransomware another means of pillaging the American people the way the civil forfeiture laws are in the real world? Kaspersky identified one hacker collective, the Equation Group, as being NSA. So either the government is making money off the ransomware, or they're proving once again they're totally incompetent and a complete waste of time. Now, a little bit of news here for those of you who are space buffs. We have a couple of stories on the main page about close views of Saturn's very strange hexagonal wind pattern on the pole, and they got some better pictures from Cassini. Now the Cassini is at the end of its mission. They're willing to take more risks with it, and they're getting some really, really good results here. Now, there is a story that is coming out of Australia, where scientists at the Green Bank Telescope in West Virginia and Arecibo in Puerto Rico have recorded 6 new fast radio bursts emitting from way outside the Milky Way galaxy. And this was reported in the Astrophysical Journal. And it's in the constellation of Auriga. And it's significant because this is the first time where a fast radio burst has been observed twice coming from the same location. Now, before we all get excited and say, E.T. phone home, we need to look back to when the pulsars were discovered, where all of a sudden they started seeing these regular bursts of radio energy, bump, 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 and we said, oh, it's proof of intelligent life. Well, a single pulsing radio signal doesn't convey a huge amount of information. And as it turned out, there was a natural explanation for these signals. Collapsed neutron star spinning rapidly, and the radio energy being funneled out through the body's magnetic field. And we need to look at the possibility that what they have discovered at Green Bank in West Virginia may be a natural phenomenon, if for no other reason than the sheer amount of power required to send that radio signal from where they are to where we are when they have no way of knowing we're here. So I'm thinking maybe it's a new class of pulsar, and maybe it's tumbling and precessing, and that's why the bursts come irregularly. Meanwhile, I have another idea when we talk about discovering alien civilizations. And it has to do with the fact that today, at this period in our history, the amount of radio energy leaking from Earth into space is actually in decline. When radio and TV first came along, there were these gigantic high-powered transmitters, 50,000-watt clear channel, KFI, and everything was over the air, TV, so forth and so on. Now it's on cable. It's on fiber optic. And yes, there are still radars out there and police radios and trunk lines and everything, but the total amount of radio energy leaking from Earth out into the universe is actually in decline. And I think that's going to be a pattern we will see in all technological civilizations. They'll discover radio, they'll have transmitters all over the place, and then they'll pull back and everything will go onto cable because it's more efficient, it takes less energy, and we are beginning to understand that exposure to radio energy over long periods of time can have some significant health effects. So when you're out there trying to find other civilizations that are out there, you have to basically be looking at them at the one moment in their history when there's a lot of radio leakage. Before they discover radio, you're not going to see them. After they complete the transition into optical cable and everything, they might be harder to find. And as systems like LIDAR come online, we're going to see even less and less radio energy leaking out there. So, and I realize, I understand from the guy who runs SETI that there are some technical problems to solve here, but I think we'd be better off trying to listen for the noise produced by their power distribution system. And the reason for that is very simple. Any civilization that develops electrical power, sooner or later, is going to realize alternating current is more efficient than direct current. The big argument between Edison and Westinghouse all over again. And the frequencies at which alternating current efficiently carries power lie in a very narrow range between 20 hertz and 400 hertz. And you're talking about a power distribution system over the entire planet carrying trillions of watts of energy leaking on out there. I'm sure anybody who's got an AM radio, you know, if you're not on an actual station, you're going to hear the hum coming from the wires in your home. Now, obviously, the radiative power of a signal increases with the frequency. And so the radiative power of a 50 or 60 or 100 hertz signal is going to be very limited. But, as we know from our own power systems, they generate harmonics in the higher frequencies. And that's something we could listen to or listen for. And we're not going to know anything about them other than the fact that if we could detect the harmonics from an AC power system coming in from the sky, we're going to know somebody's out there. And we can start narrowing in to find out who and what they might be. And unlike radio energy, the power system isn't going to go away. That's once they develop electricity, that signature is going to be there, and it's going to be getting larger and larger with time. So I think that might be one way that we could look for extraterrestrial civilizations. And again, some technical issues. But if Donald Trump is going to turn NASA away from supporting human-caused global warming to going back out to explore the solar system and the universe, I think that would be a really cool idea. I think that we're within maybe a decade of having a permanent lunar base on the far side, just over the hill, out of sight of the Earth, out of the radio noise from Earth, and set up some radio telescopes there that would work in the ultra-long frequencies. Because it doesn't take a big steerable dish, it just takes a big gigantic coil a couple of miles across. And I think that would be something that I'd like to see happen. Because I'm a big space buff, as you all know. And as we come up here on the end of the show, I'm going to go back and catch a couple of headlines. Sprint is now announcing 5,000 jobs are going to be coming back to the United States. Trump is out there trying to encourage people to come on back, and apparently for Sprint, they're going to be letting go of these foreign-based customer service call centers, bringing them back here, and looking at that. Apparently Californians are flocking to the gun stores ahead of the new gun control laws that will take effect next week. I got to tell you, I love California. It's a beautiful state. I lived in Southern California for a lot of years working in the film industry. Claire's from San Francisco. We lived there briefly when I was working on Day After Tomorrow. We absolutely loved it. But politically, they're going nuts over there. And I'd like this year, 2017, to be the year that Claire and I succeed in moving back to the mainland. But California is definitely not on the list of places I want to go to. Now, we may be constrained by somebody saying, we need you to come work for us, and you've got to come live near the studio and come in and use the studio. But if we're able to move on our own, we're probably going to be looking at some place around maybe Virginia, sort of midway between Indiana, where we have some family, and New England, where I have some family, and far enough south we don't have to worry about those glaciers. They're going to start coming on down from north. But we'd like to move back to the mainland. Claire would like some better singers, and I get invited all the time to speak at various symposiums and conferences, but they can't afford the airfare coming from out here in Hawaii. So once I can get back to the mainland, I can go on out and talk to people, and that would be a great deal of fun. Meanwhile, down in Peru, two volcanoes just 60 miles apart have erupted. And again, we seem to be getting into a period of increased geological activity for Earth. There's that other volcano up in the Aleutians we were talking about yesterday, is in a state of multiple eruption. And a lot of major quakes and everything. It's kind of wonder what's going on here with the Earth. Okay, let's see. Gosh darn, global warming. The first week of 2017, record cold. They're predicting 48 states below freezing. And again, the absurdities that we're seeing coming out of the corporate media about how it's broiling up in the Arctic. Now, to be very honest, the temperature at the North Pole, as recorded by one of the ocean buoys, did move above 0 centigrade briefly, then immediately started back down. Nobody knows why. The amount of time it was above zero was so brief, it's kind of hard to say what caused it. It may have been a whale underneath or something. Anyway, we're going to take a phone call. Tim in Wyoming, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael. Thanks for taking my call. I appreciate it. Hope your Christmas was good. Now, you're just mentioning something about a moon base on the far side. People have posited for years that it's possible that the Chinese already have a moon base.
Well, the Chinese are working to build one on the side facing the Earth, and obviously, for the sake of communications and everything, that would be good. I know the Russians have been talking about it for a while as well, but the advantage of a base on the far side of the moon is specifically related to radio astronomy and being shielded from this incredible racket that pours out of our planet.
What about what about the fact that, according to all the people that have ever been to the moon, I mean, we won't go into that, but according to the data that was brought back from the moon, the other side, the far side of the moon, the dark side of the moon, is extraordinarily cold. And so people would have to, there'd have to be special, I mean, they're in the shade.
Well, first of all, Tim, okay, first of all, the moon rotates about its axis the same period that it takes to orbit the Earth, which is why we see that same side, but there's still night and day on the moon. It's just 28 days long. And so when the sun is shining on the surface of the moon, it's hundreds of degrees hot. When the sun isn't there, it's hundreds of degrees cold. And there might even be a power supply in that by finding a way to literally store the heat and the cold and then use them to drive electric generation. But the far side of the moon, they called it the dark side because nobody could see it until Russia's Luna 3. But the far side of the moon goes through the same night and day cycle as the side that we see.
I thought that Pink Floyd was the one who talked about the dark side.
Pink Floyd was into the recreational pharmaceuticals, and don't get me wrong, I love Pink Floyd, but I wouldn't rely on him for scientific truth.
Right. And which one's pink anyway? Yeah.
True.
Yeah. Okay, well, that was pretty much all I wanted to say. I wanted to mention that. And if you're thinking about moving to the mainland, as you say, why don't you move to Wyoming? We need more people here with brains.
Thank you. I'll
there are
certainly...
quite a few, but we need more.
Do you have good singers there?
Probably somewhere. Cowboy singers, I think, but cowboy poets, etc. They're
we need good classically trained singers, and that's going to be our top priority. Anyway, Tim, we're going to let you go. I got to take a break for commercials. We'll be back with the last segment of our program after these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And as we come to the end of the Obama era and we start looking forward to the Trump presidency, it does feel like we're on the cusp of some major changes, transformations, mostly good. I'm very excited about NASA getting a little bit of a boost to go back out into space. And partly it's economic, civilian technology incubator creating new technologies on which to base new products and new industries. But there's always going to be that scientist in me that wants to find out what's out there on that other planet, what's underneath the ice of Europa, what's swimming around in those methane pools on Titan. Was Gilbert Levin right all along, and there's indigenous microbial life on Mars? I'd like to know those things, because I'm habitually curious. Story coming on out from the Express in Great Britain. They're now beginning to find out that, yes, indeed, there was election fraud going on during the Brexit vote. And apparently they've actually got somebody who came on out on a radio interview with host Katie Hopkins saying that, yeah, I voted twice and, that we just had to do it. We had to save Great Britain from being its own nation again. And this is why I really plan after Trump is in the White House, my focus for the next 2 years, we must tear down and overhaul our election system and turn it into something that the American people can have trust and faith and confidence in. I've laid out a blueprint for it already. It can be done. I refuse to accept that the nation that put men on the moon can't come up with an absolutely trustworthy election system. You look at those electronic voting machines, you can't look inside, you can't peek at what's going on. Compare that with electronic gambling machines in Las Vegas that have to be inspected, where the software is in escrow, where it's under constant examination to make sure there's no cheating going on. Doesn't our election system deserve the same? Of course, for my plan, there won't be any electronic voting machines. There won't be any tabulation centers. We're going to crowdsource the election process. So everybody's involved. Everybody's in a position to verify for themselves. And it's going to make vote fraud very, very difficult to do, very, very difficult to conceal, as opposed to our current system, which is designed to facilitate and conceal massive election fraud. And again, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, because we're going to have a president who's sympathetic to having honest elections. Because Trump knows how badly the election was rigged against him. He's not going to want to face that 4 years from now. So we're going to move forward on that. I'm counting on all of you to help me with that. The first step to restoring the republic is honest, verifiable, transparent elections. There's the music. Time for me to get out of here, get something useful done with the rest of the day. We'll be back tomorrow, Thursday, here on Republic Broadcasting. A reminder that the Lady Claire will be joining us on Friday for our New Year's show. And so remember, you are all part of the independent media. Take what you learn here, share it with everyone that you know. Go gentle. Don't trigger their defensive reflexes. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.